this session. But this session is going to talk about recording example external forms for attestation purposes and how to both uh, send the external form to the client to produce the final form that the client gets a copy of and the case gets a copy of, and also retain that signature for whatever validation purposes it needs down the road. So to start with, let's take a look at what this looks like from the end user perspective, and then we'll take a look at how to build it, because building it is a number of different steps, which is why we're doing this call today. So you'll see I've got a case open right now. It's important to note the client's date of birth is January 1st of 2000. Nice, easy date to remember. And in this site, I have a send external forms process. You may have this built elsewhere. You can also put the block that is used by this process in other elements. But what I'm going to send is I'm going to send my income attestation external process to the client. Obviously, I can do this using email, and I can see my email message below. I can do this using text messages, and I can see my text messages below. But for demonstration purposes today, and so that we can all see what the client would get, I'm going to ask for a manual link, right? And I'm just going to copy this link. And this link isn't actually good until I click continue, right? Until I hit submit and save it, this link is not valid. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this, and now that link is valid. So I can go to that link in a new tab, and I have to verify my date of birth, 01/01/2000. I can click continue, and then this is going to give me some details, right? It's giving me the total household size, the number of people under 18, the number of people over 18, and it's giving me the client's income. Obviously, I picked a case where the client had no income, so let's just hop back for a second and fix that. Edit financial information. And if I change this to employment weekly of 400 and food stamps monthly of 100 and child support monthly of 200, right? And I'm just going to save that. Now, since I updated, I have no. All right, so since I have now saved that, the external form is a live feed, right? So I can just refresh this page, and I now have my new income details here, right? And I can see this income, and then I can ask the client to do whatever, provide whatever text I might need to the client. Right here, I'm asking them to affirm under the penalty of perjury, right? That's language I'm familiar with in Texas. I am assuming that your states all have different language that you might need for your attestations. And here, right, it's asking them to attest that the income and assets are to the best of their knowledge, right? I can then sign my name, right, and do my signature and say that I accept it, right? And that's using the legal server signature attestation feature, and I can click continue. Now, once I do that, it's going to generate the form. It's going to give you your external profile. The thank you note here, this can obviously be customized. And then on the back end, right, on the case level, we now have that signature. So if I were to go to views and print view, I have an income attestation print view. And when I come to look at it, I see exactly what I gave the client on the front end, right? Along with their signature, what they're attesting to, and when this was created, right? So that here I can see all of this information, and then this is also easily available, right, as a printed version. So I now have an attestation with exactly what they said, what income they told us they provided, and their signature for us. Right. So all of these pieces need to work together for this example to work. And no, I didn't actually mean to print that. And it takes a couple steps to put all of those pieces in place. So, right. Just as a side note, as I start walking through this, if you want to follow along on your own site, or if you want to follow along with the instructions, we have a help page that has all of these instructions, and that's here. So unfortunately, right, there has to be a specific order in terms of um, uh, the the development that you do for this, because if you do it in a different way, you're going to end up going back to something else and having to repeat yourself. Um, right. And with that, let's dive into the configurations. So first, um, right, we have to start with the signature attestation, right? So we're going to go to our lookups. And in our lookups, we've got two lookups that are called our signature attestation. Um, right? There's the signature attestation and then the signature attestation type. So I'm going to create my attestation here, and I'm going to call it a financial attestation. Right? You'll notice I already have a financial one and I already have a citizenship attestation. I'm just creating a new one here so that we've got some example to work with. If I click back at this point, right, it remembers my search, so I can now click into the signature attestation. And here's where I can put in the exact text that I'm asking them to attest to, right? So name, right, financial attestation, and I'm going to call this, right, I swear and affirm that the income provided above is true and accurate to the best of my knowledge, right? And it could be whatever language you're required to put in here by your grantees or your funders or the court. That's the piece that I have to do on the back end for those signatures. The next piece to work through is you can go back to the admin, and I'm going to go into my processes, forms, and profiles. And I'm going to create a print profile. This is what I want to print out at the end, right? This is going to have the signed version of all of the different elements. So I can come up here and I want a new print profile. That's what I'm looking for. And we'll call this my financial attestation. I'm going to mark this active, and I'm going to select that this is a child profile to the main profile. That's where it goes. And then I've got a couple elements that I want to add here. Right? This is where I'm going to figure out exactly what is going on this form. So I'm going to have my header, and we'll call this income attestation. Right? I might put in here field, right? Total household size, my number of people 18 and over, right? The number of people under 18. If I want, I could put on a list view of family members, right? For any of these list views that I put on here, please be very careful about how many columns you display, right? You want this to print on a piece of paper, presumably. And if you put a lot of pieces of paper, I mean, a lot of columns, it may spread across the form. And some of it may be cut off. So I'm just going to put 4 columns in here as available, right? Remember that when you're configuring list views, if everything is disabled, everything is actually enabled. And so just be aware of that. I'm also checking the box to say show list title, right? I want to see that it says family members at the top of this, right? I can then add another list view for income. And again, I can open this up. This has a lot less columns. I can probably get away with just leaving all of this here, but I probably want it to have a title. And then I might also want my liquid assets, right? Again, a lot less columns, so I can probably get away with just leaving it as is and saying, but making sure that I'm checking the box to show the list title. If I don't do this, I could obviously put in a header row instead. But this is what would be needed here. And then I can have in here an instruction, right? I'm gonna make sure that I check the box to say show line breaks. And then this would have like this is my required boilerplate text for the instruction, right? Signed under the penalty of perjury. I can never spell right. Whatever else needs to go in here, right? I can have this as an instruction. And then at the bottom, the most important list view to put here is the signature attestation list view, right? Again, if I leave this as is, there's probably too many columns. So I want to make sure that I grab the signature, right? The created date, and probably the attestation, right? And then I will want to make sure that I click the enable custom default filters, right? And that's because I want to make sure that I limit it to just the financial attestation and I limit it to just the financial attestation, right? The attestation name that I'm listing it to and the type, right? You might end up needing to get multiple financial attestations from a client over the course of the case, right? One at the initial onset of the case, and then 3 months later, they got a new job and you have to update their income and you send them another one. You're probably going to want to set this up with the same financial attestation, right? Attestation name, but you might have 2 types. You might have your initial financial attestation and then your second or your third financial attestation, so that when you gather their signature, you're gathering their signature in a separate record than before. Because if you send them the exact same form a second time, when you print it out, you'll now have 2 signature lines instead of 1. And so if you're specifying the type, and then you have financial attestation 1, financial attestation 2, right? You're able to distinguish between those. Obviously, when you do that, you have to have a separate financial attestation external form and a separate print preview. But it's just something to be aware of as you're going through that. All right, I am now going to click continue. I now have saved my my print profile. So the next piece that I need is I need an external profile, right? This is what the client sees when they click continue and everything is saved. So I'm going to come into actions and I'm going to add a new matter external profile, right? And we'll call this thank you. Mark is active. And then we're just going to put an instruction on here that says, thank you for completing the financial attestation. We will be in touch as necessary for your case. Obviously, feel free to add whatever fun, nice language you want here. If you want to add any logos or graphics, right, you can switch this over to format as HTML and do it in that way. Just click continue. And now I'm going to go to actions, right? And I need to add now an external auxiliary form. Right? This is where I get my external process. So I'm going to say that send financial attestation. I want to create a new process for this. And I want to make sure that I mark this as active and has a continue button. Now, to be honest and to be forthright, everything that I put on the income form on the print profile needs to be here as well. Right. And so I'm going to put on here financial attestation. And then we're going to put on here right. So the first thing was the total household size, and then the number of people 18 and over, and then the number of people under 18. And then we had a list view for family. And then we had a list view for income and assets. We just have to come in here and add headers for these. Name, gender, date of birth, relationship type. And then we need our instruction just once, right? Boilerplate goes here. I sign on the penalty of perjury, whatever else you might need, right? We're going to make sure that we check the show line breaks so that we get the multiple line breaks. And then the instructions that we have shared on our help page don't suggest this, but it may make sense, right? To instead of putting the signature block, to put a piece of branch logic instead. And so I'll walk through that as well. So I'm going to say save and stay on page. I'm going to open up the manage processes in a new tab. I'm going to go to my branch logic forms. I'm going to add a new branch logic form that is financial attestation accurate equals yes. And then here I'm going to put my block for my signature attestation. And we're going to use my financial attestation, and we're going to use the attestation statement of the financial attestation, right? This matches what we see later on as well. You're welcome to experiment with whether you need the confirmation or not, right? Please confirm your signature. Right? This just looks a little different in terms of the user interaction with it, and it's up to you in terms of what settings here you want to put on here. The other piece that needs to go on this block is the email PDF of profile block, right? And here we can say, right, the financial attestation form, right? Here's a copy of the form you just signed electronically. And then it's important that we make sure we match this up to the financial attestation print profile that we just created, right? And then the destination is going to be for the client, right? So this is how the client gets a PDF copy of what they've just signed so that they can open it up and review it in the future. I'm going to click continue. And then now that version is here. I'm going to add another version, right? That is my financial attestation accurate equals false. Actually, no. Right. And I'm just going to put on here, let's just save this real quick. Actions, create a new custom field. And I'm going to put on here text area, financial attestation issues. And this is a way for the client to tell me what is actually wrong with the form that we've given them, right? And then on this one, I would also put the send email block. Issue with financial attestation. Right. There was an issue with the financial attestation. The client submitted notes to adjust, or whatever you want here. I'm again going to say that the recipient here should be the client, but this block also has a feature down here at the bottom where I can add recipients by the assignment type. So I'm going to select primary because now, right, the primary assignment is going to get this email and know what happened here, right? And so we may also want to add up here in the URL, right, that we have the what is this? It's typically the U:C, right? And now we've got that additional information. Yeah, there are a lot of steps here, and that's because it's a lot of interrelated pieces. Do you want to do the branch logic? You can sort of skip past that if you don't want to. Right? If you don't, but if you skip past that, you end up with what I had initially, which says, hey, go back. It doesn't give the client a way to say this is wrong. It just their only option is to sign it. I'm going to go ahead and click continue here. Right. I've now created my branch logic pieces. So now if I come back to my original external form that I was working on, right, I can now add in here my branch logic. And I realize I need a custom field, right, which is just going to be a Boolean and financial attestation is accurate. And so now I can add my branch logic for the financial attestation is accurate. And I'm going to switch this to radio button so it looks neat. And then I'm going to say financial attestation accurate, yes. Financial attestation accurate, no. And then I can click continue. If you don't already have a send external forms process that's available to you, right, you are likely going to need to create one, right? And that's just an new auxiliary form. And we would add send external attestations. I would mark this to create the new process. And I would say active with a continue button. And then the one piece that I need here on the block is the client survey send request block. The name is a little bit of a handful, but right, I want to make sure that I list limit this to the matter aux forms to a client. Um, and I can choose that if I want this to be my send financial attestation example. Um, I can change my defaults here. If you're sending this out, the two pieces that I like putting on here as well, as fields, are just the date of birth for the client to make sure that they've got that, because that's how they authenticate for this. And also the all phone numbers display only version, right? So this way I can see what phone numbers they have if I want to send this by text message. I'm just going to click continue. And once I've created that auxiliary form, I have to typically add it to my menu boxes. Your menu boxes is your actions menu. And so this is where all of those pieces are. So I'm just going to come in here, and in my civil actions, I'm just going to add in here my send external attestations. And now that's in place. The other options, yes. So if I come back to my process for my send financial attestation external auxiliary form, I can click on the pencil here to edit my process. And if I look at this process, I can see that there's a couple options for verifying their identity. Right? Date of birth is one, zip code is another, home phone, mobile phone, bar number. Right? Obviously, bar number is not going to be a valid one for clients, but you could use one of these other options. Right? Again, we have some warnings. If you're using a phone number, asking them to validate using the phone number is not really a secure option. Right? But you can choose which of these you would like to use. The other piece here is that I can also add in, right, my logo on the form if I wanted to, or upload a new one as well. And here's where I can identify my external profile. So this is what happens with the thank you screen, right? And I can specify, make sure you go to the thank you profile as opposed to a we'll be in touch with you profile. So I now have all of those different pieces built that I needed for this example. So let's go into a new case. And I'm going to pick this one that's got my name on it. And let's click on financials. So we've got assets and household size, but let's actually check edit case info, edit financial information. I make some money. Let's add some checking, 5,000 notes, joint account, and a savings account with $50 was under overdrawn last week. And I'll click continue. And then let's also just double check who do we have in terms of family on this case. So let's add another family member, test, son, and we'll put in a date of birth. All right. So now we've got a child on this case. We've got we've got income and assets, right? I can now come to my civil actions and send an external attestation form, right? So I'm going to say, again, I want to do this manually with a link. I'm grabbing the link and I'm clicking continue. And now I can put this in here, right? And I've got my form. Now I can see that I made at least one mistake in creating this, right? These two fields at the top here are editable, and that's probably not what I wanted to do, right? So I should be able to come back to my send financial attestation process and go into my send financial attestation, and then just come in here and check that these two fields are read only. I'll save that and I'll refresh this page, right? Again, you can have, I only put an instruction at the bottom of this where the boilerplate goes here, but I could have put this, I could have put additional information at the top explaining why they're getting this form or what they need to do with this form, right? I also have my Boolean question here, financial attestation is accurate, right? I click yes, they have their piece and they can sign it. If I said no, right, I now have a place to put the issues. They're not signing it. I can then get that email as the primary attorney, make any changes that I need to, and update that as well. Right? So here, let's go ahead and sign this. Right? And then if I come back to the case, right? If I go to my signatures tab, I have that signature that I just captured, right? And then I also, if I go to my print profile, right? My financial attestation is not here because it was not added specifically to my menu items list. If I go to my documents section, right, under generated documents, it didn't automatically save a copy for me. But that we could make that happen with a different block. So I'm going to quickly edit this for a moment. And I'm going to go into my menu boxes. Oh, here's the print profile. Actually, that's why I see it twice. Print profile. And we'll add the financial attestation. Here's the financial attestation that we built together, right? I'm seeing my family members, I'm seeing my income, I'm seeing assets, I'm seeing that new signature. Right? So that can all be there as well. It would probably be a couple hours of setup on our end, right? And making sure that having a meeting with you all to go over it. And so it would probably be in that realm. We'd have to talk internally if there's going to be a set fee for that. Other questions about this attestation form and process?
Hi, this is Matt from Public Justice Center. Real quick, first, thank you. Appreciate you showing us all this. This is very helpful. And then, so with respect to the kind of authentication, I'll call it, where you're entering date of birth or something like that. when we're using DocuSign or something else, we're not having to authenticate it other than it goes to their email address and they sign it from a link in their email address. Here, we're looking to send things by text to a client and get them to sign primarily over a text and a link. Is there a need for further authentication that I'm not thinking about? In other words, why do we have to have the date of birth? Why did it have to be some other authentication other than we're sending it to their phone number and they're using that phone number in order to access a certain form and get it back to us?
So the reason for the additional authentication is that you could build other things with this besides attestation agreements, right? And so you could actually have this display additional information to the client that might be confidential. You could have this uh, give the client a questionnaire with 15, 20 questions to answer.
Mm,
And so in any of those cases where you're sharing what might be confidential or privileged information, right, or collecting what could be confidential information, right, having that extra level of security is not a bad thing.
got it. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. But if we don't want to do that, we don't have to. Is that right?
I don't know if there's a way to turn off the authentication piece at all.
Okay,
Obviously, right, you could send this to them by text message and then they have to put in their cell phone number, and then right, obviously they have their cell phone number because you just texted it to them. So
right.
right, like that's not a major burden there.
Got it. So
Um,
just use the cell phone number instead of the birth date. Got it. Okay.
yeah. Carla, you asked about sending this at the pre-screen level. Yes, it can be done at the pre-screen level. Um, I will. One of the other pieces that groups often ask about is language translation. And if you wanted to translate the forms or the elements into another language like Spanish, or um, Chinese or something else like that, it's worth noting that um, you can easily do that yourself just by writing the instruction differently here for things like thank you for completing the financial attestation. But for other pieces of this, like where it says steps and where it says full name and gender and date of birth, right? That's not the fields that automatically are set up by legal server. Those won't translate on your own accord, right? You would have to use our um, our multiple language module to be able to support that second or third language. There is a cost to that multiple language module, um, right? The cost is primarily on the initial setup. So when you first do that, right, it's more expensive to turn it on initially, but then adding any additional languages is um, much less costly. But there are some configuration elements to setting that up. And I threw that help page in the chat. Other questions I can help with? I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording and then